Today's panel was conceived because this is a topic that, films that get unfinished, that when I spend time with filmmakers, that is a topic that often gets discussed, but you hardly ever see it discussed anyplace else. So I'm going to bring all my panelists up right now, and I'll introduce them once they're on stage. Taking the stage first here is Nelson George. Nelson had a film at Doc NYC a couple of years ago called Brooklyn Boheme, where he was looking at the area of Fort Greene in Brooklyn and the artistic renaissance that area had experienced in the 80s and 90s. Nelson also produced the terrific documentary Good Hair with Chris Rock. He made the announcement about Magic Johnson for ESPN Films. He has a new film about funk that's going to be on VH1 in February, and we're very pleased to have him join us. Next to Nelson is Rachel Grady. Her last film in collaboration with her longtime partner Heidi Ewing was Detropia. Their other films include Jesus Camp and 12th in Delaware. They did one of the most memorable segments in the Freakonomics film, and thank you for coming, Rachel. Next to me is Amy Nicholson. Last year, one of the highlights of Doc NYC was the world premiere of her film Zipper, Coney Island's Last Wild Ride, about what's been going on in Coney Island, largely during the Bloomberg administration, as developers have been eyeing that property, and she very cleverly used the Zipper ride as a kind of totem for what's been going on with that project. Zipper played here at the IFC Center. It's qualified for the Oscar this year, and when I first announced that we were going to do this topic, Amy immediately called me up and she said, "I've got a great story." So actually, Amy, why don't, let me start with you. Talk about your most haunted, unfinished story.
Is this working? Yeah, okay. So before Zipper, which Zipper was supposed to be a short, ha ha ha. Before Zipper, I became fascinated, and timing is everything. I became fascinated with guys who are really into decorating their houses for Christmas. And not just the people who literally have to hire police help and who get in trouble with their neighbors to the point where they have to move. And who
These are strictly guys?
They're all pretty much middle class white men, kind of in their 50s, because they are programmers and engineers. And I was fascinated with them because it really was like an artistic outlet for them. It was amazing how much creativity they put into everything and how kind of obsessed they became with it. And and I went down that path. I'm happy to share more details, but I want to come back. But yeah, I went down that path for 2 years. And for several really big reasons, I just kind of had to stop.
Well, let me tease that out a little bit more. What were the, in brief, the roadblocks that you hit that after 2 years of putting time into this, you finally had to concede that this wasn't going to happen?
Well, two big things. Reality television, which I kept thinking, oh, it's going to go away. Like everybody, I was hoping it would go away. Reality television, and so the Learning Channel and Discovery Channel, they have to make programming, and they thought it was a really good idea to go and get these guys, during Christmas time, and they could make these specials about them. And I even figured out a way to work that in, because I was like, okay, well, there's a certain amount of fame that comes with having the craziest house, so I'll just incorporate how much has been written about you, how many shows have you been on, I'll make that part of the competition. But then another funny thing happened, which was LED lighting. And it kind of took a little bit of the challenge out of it, because part of the challenge was to run the electric. And also as time went on, kind of in combination with LED lighting, one of the things that happened was a whole sub-industry started building up, and very quickly people figured out how to market programs so that you could just plug it into the computer and animate your house, which took all of the, and you had to know how to, you know, get in there and program every single light that went on and match it to music, and then figure out how to broadcast it onto people's car radios. It was really challenging before, and then it just suddenly became this like, oh, it's kind of, now you
Rachel's looking like she wants to go out and make this
can buy out of the
documentary.
box.
No, I'm so disappointed that amateurs could just get in there and do it.
Yeah.
That's lame.
Yeah, and then one guy I met along the way, he actually started doing it for other people. So you didn't even have to do your house anymore. You could just hire someone, which I thought, okay. But yeah, LED lighting and reality TV kind of killed it. Yeah.
So, Rachel, you and Heidi have a really, impressive track record of putting out films steadily over the last several years. So, during that time, has there been any, pet project that hurts you? You were never able to finish.
There are so many, but I'd like to say that they're all pet projects because no one's gonna make any of them, even the ones that get made. But yeah, I mean, documentaries are inefficient in every possible way. One of the ways is that you have to come up with 15 ideas and maybe one of them will happen. So we're always looking for things and, cold calling people and, spending a little bit of money to shoot a little bit of something. So, because it's so rare that you actually, that something catches, that it's exciting enough that you keep wanting to do it, that the person's on board, that you can get money for it. There's all these factors. So there's so many. There's ones that, you can pick. There's ones that we thought we were making, but they were lying to us. There's ones that...
Where someone came to you and said, we want you to make this? Or the subjects were lying?
The subject was pretending like it was happening, but it was not. There's that one. There's one where came up with an idea, abandoned it, and then 10 years later it was like the best idea ever, and it was just pure ignorance and laziness that could have had like blockbuster. So
whatever happened to that Justin Bieber kid?
Exactly. So take your flavor. Like, it happens all the time. We have boxes and boxes of like.
Is there anyone that you would go into a little bit more detail, just tantalize us with a topic?
Well, I have always been obsessed with, and I'm still obsessed with, Richard Simmons. I think he's like fascinating person.
It's the hair, right?
It's everything about him. He's like, I'm upset. I personally very curious about self-help people, self-help gurus, people that become experts on helping other people, and people believe it, and then it works or it doesn't work, and just all those things I think is really fascinating. And since I was little, I thought Richard Simmons was so interesting. I just didn't even get it. And so Heidi and I decided that he would be a great subject. And we called him. He wasn't responding. So we decided he does an aerobics class and a self-help group every Saturday morning at his studio in Beverly Hills called the Slimmons Studio. So I was like, let's just go take the class. Let's go take the class and see if we can meet him. And we were in LA, so we went, got up early, went to the self-help group, which was like, 40 women in a circle, writing notes on pieces of paper and passing it around. And it was very awkward. It was mostly overweight women, and you could tell they were like, who are these spies? Why are those two girls here? And plus they all knew each other, because we realized that there was this group of women that had no intention of ever losing weight, that they were like, wanted to stay with him. So they were, but so I was like, by the minute, the whole thing was getting more fascinating. I was like, oh my God, we are right. This is incredible. And then also just watching him, he's just even more brilliant than I would have ever thought. I mean, his emotional intelligence is off the scales. I've never seen anything like it. It feels like he's reading your mind. I was like, oh my God, he's reading my mind. He knows that I'm here to hit him up to be in my movie, and he was just checking us out like crazy, but he was curious because also we were newcomers and it was the same group every time. And then the class started and it was the most insane aerobics. It didn't make any sense. It was like sprinkling of 80s, a sprinkling, I didn't know what the music was crazy, and everyone was running into each other, and it was nuts. And then afterwards, we went up to him and we approached him and had a very nice conversation with him, and he seemed genuinely flattered, and he had heard of Jesus Camp and he loved that movie, and he wanted to see other work of ours, and this friendship thing started, and we started emailing with him, and we sent him our work, and he liked it, and then he was telling us different things we could maybe shoot in his life, and this is coming up, and I'm going on this trip, and I'm hosting this cruise, and we were like, oh my God, this is gonna be so awesome. And then silence, and then all caps shouting at us, leave me alone, don't you see I don't want to do this? And we were like, wait, he's like off his meds or something, because it's really changed. And so then silence, and then we tried like every year to get him back, and silence. And then we ran into somebody else that told us a story that was just like this. So apparently he's out there seducing all kinds of documentary filmmakers. And I would still, in a heartbeat, make that film. I really think, not in all seriousness, I think that he would be a wonderful, fascinating person to explore. But there's a lot of those, I have a lot of those types of stories where we thought it was happening, but we were just being toyed with.
Wow. That's a lot of people who just like want to toy with Rachel and Heidi. Like, I'll let them think that they're going to make my film.
Quite a few. Get our hopes up.
That's an interesting one. Nelson, we were talking upstairs before the panel about one film particularly that you had in mind where the impediment really is money. It's just that this would be.
But my background is as a music journalist. That's what I did for most of my 20s, and I've written a number of books on music. And so I always I can't wait to make I'm gonna make music documentaries. It's gonna be great because I know so much about them. And the worst experience I've had is music documentaries. The one for VH1 is gonna come on finally, and I just spent the last 6 months clearing music. Not still, I'm like, nervous, the deal's gonna fall through. But the doc that I really wanted to do, that I've been working on, or involved with, I should say, I've stopped working on it, was sort of goes all the way back to 2003 or 2004. There's a great catalog of great music, Philadelphia Music, one of the greatest catalogs of soul pop music in American history. People named Gamble and Huff, these two songwriters, but the OJs, For the Love of Money, MSSB, Teddy Pendergrass, the Spinners, the Stylistics. It's an amazing collection of songs that basically three guys wrote the majority of all this great music that people get married to, that people do beer commercials to. I mean, these songs have just endured since the 70s. So it was always my pet thing to do a great documentary on the Philly sound. So I don't want to use too many names, but there's a woman who was my hookup she had been intimate or the girlfriend of one of the key people. So she was my way in, which turned out to be the problem, of course. Because we went down to Philly, I was spending my own money, and we interviewed Teddy Pendergrass before he died. Amazing interview with Teddy Pendergrass. These great songwriters, McFadden Whitehead, who wrote Ain't No Stopping Us Now, a classic song, who are now both dead. So we have this interview. And we interviewed all these people. We had access to this amazing studio that's now been burned down, called Sigma Sound Studio, which was where all this great Philadelphia music was recorded. Going back to even the era of the American Bandstand, is such a legendary spot. But we could never get the real people to sit and do an interview. So I would go down there, and I spent a couple of years going down to Philadelphia to train. We hired camera people, money's out the pocket, and we're accumulating more and more interviews, but never the key guy, two people would never sit down with us. And I was like, so what's going on? And it kind of, it took me a long time. No one ever said it, but obviously there was an emotional relationship thing going on between my conduit to this world and the key people, that while I had access to a certain point, there was a reluctance to go forward. And that, I didn't really ascertain. I thought, well, this is going to be great. So I spent a lot of time and money and passion, because I really believed in that. I was going to do a book with it. I thought this was going to be a really great story, because the Philadelphia music scene, it's the bridge between kind of Motown and disco. They were the inheritors of soul music, and then their music that came out of Philly becomes disco. It becomes Love Is a Message, which comes out of the same musicians, the same scene. So they're like the missing link in a way for a lot of history of soul music to disco. I said, well, this is a piece I've always wanted to do, and it just bedeviled me. And $30,000 later, I'm seriously bedeviled, right? And I had to eventually kind of abandon it, 'cause I just couldn't. I was really super, super frustrated, because it was almost like, I could almost grasp this is going to happen, and it never did. Then it came back again out of a couple of years ago. It came back. Well, yeah, we're ready to do it now. And so I went down to Philly and had more meetings. It's all going to be great. But a lot of it came back to this question of music publishing. Even though these guys wrote all these great songs, who actually controlled the songs? And that's always the issue. As you know from the history, anybody who's read the history of the music business, there's these crazy publishing deals that define how music is really controlled. The songwriters, even if they haven't sold off their rights to it, which a lot of older songwriters end up doing, there's still Warner Chappell Music. There's a big conglomerate on top of it, and they're not interested in cutting deals necessarily, especially since a lot of these songs are ending up in car commercials, beer commercials, so they're making really good money off of them. Why should they cut us a deal?